In a small coastal town in the Philippines, where the sun painted the sea with gold each morning and the evening smelled faintly of salt and grilled fish, lived a boy named Mateo. At 12 years old, his world was made of simplicity, shacks built of bamboo, the sound of tricycles rattling down narrow streets, the laughter of children playing barefoot in the dust. Yet, for Mateo, life had always been more than survival. He carried in his heart a secret treasure, one that no poverty could diminish, his voice. From the time he could walk, he sang, on the beach with waves crashing like drums behind him, in the small wooden church where neighbors gathered on Sundays, and late at night when the power went out, and families lit candles to push back the dark. His mother, Lisa, often told him, "Your voice is a gift, a knack. One day, the world will hear it." Mateo only smiled, though deep inside he wondered if such a dream could ever be true for someone like him, who sometimes went to bed hungry and sang to distract himself from the ache in his stomach. Life had not been kind. His father had died when he was only 6, swept away by a typhoon while trying to rescue fishermen caught at sea. Since then, his mother worked endlessly, cleaning houses and selling vegetables in the market, but still their money barely stretched far enough for rice and school fees. Mateo helped however he could, carrying water, selling small bags of peanuts on the street, even singing in jeepneys for a few pesos. He never complained, though, because in his heart he believed his father was watching, and he wanted to make him proud. The one luxury Mateo allowed himself was music. At the back of the marketplace, there was a battered old guitar hanging in a pawnshop window, its strings missing and its body scarred. He stared at it every day, whispering promises that one day he'd buy it. Until then, he practiced with his voice alone, mimicking songs he heard on the radio, memorizing every lyric he could. One song in particular fascinated him, Hotel California, by the Eagles. Something in its haunting melody, its long notes that seemed to stretch like the horizon, spoke to his soul. Though he barely understood its meaning, the song made him feel both lonely and alive, as though it were written for dreamers like him. One afternoon, while singing at the market, a foreign tourist stopped in his tracks. The man was American, tall, with a camera slung over his shoulder. He listened for a moment, then asked Mateo, "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Embarrassed, Mateo shrugged. "Just listening, sir." The man smiled and handed him a bill far larger than Mateo expected, enough to feed his family for a week. But more than the money, the man left him with words that burned in his memory. "Kid, you've got something special. Don't stop singing." For the first time, Mateo allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, music could be his way out of poverty. Months later, fate struck in a way. No one could have predicted. A local charity announced auditions for a global talent competition being hosted in Manila, where scouts from the United States would select a handful of children to perform abroad. The prize? A chance to fly to Los Angeles and compete in front of world-renowned judges on an international stage. The very thought seemed impossible, like trying to touch the moon. Mateo almost didn't go. He had no proper clothes, no guitar, and no money for the bus ride. But his mother, with tears in her eyes, pressed a small envelope of coins into his hands. "Go, Anak," she whispered. "This is your father's dream too." The audition hall was intimidating, bright lights, children dressed neatly in pressed shirts, carrying instruments Mateo could only dream of owning. When his turn came, he stepped nervously onto the small stage. The judges asked what he would sing, and with a trembling voice he answered, "Hotel California." At first, they looked puzzled. A barefoot boy in patched shorts singing a rock classic? But when he opened his mouth, the room stilled. His voice was clear, powerful, carrying not just melody but emotion, longing, sorrow, hope. By the time he reached the soaring chorus, the audience of parents and contestants alike erupted into applause. He didn't just sing the song, he lived it. Weeks later, Mateo found himself boarding a plane for the first time in his life. His ticket to Los Angeles was both a miracle and a burden. His whole town had gathered donations, neighbors pooling coins and small bills, believing in him. "Sing for us all, Mateo," they said. The boy who once sang on jeepneys was now flying across oceans, his dreams cradled in the clouds. When the day of his performance arrived, the stage was unlike anything he had ever seen, towering lights, cameras everywhere, an audience of thousands. The judges, famous faces he'd only glimpsed on TV, sat before him, waiting. His hands shook as he gripped the microphone. For a moment, he thought of backing out. But then he remembered his father, his mother's sacrifices, the neighbors who believed in him. Taking a deep breath, he whispered a prayer and began. The first notes of Hotel California drifted through the theater, soft and haunting. The crowd leaned in. As he sang, his voice grew stronger, each word carrying not just sound but story. He sang of loneliness, of dreams beyond reach, of nights filled with hope and heartbreak. People in the audience began to cry, not because of the song itself but because of the boy who sang it, barefoot in his heart, but soaring in spirit. When he hit the final high note, holding it longer than anyone thought possible, the theater erupted. The judges leapt to their feet, clapping, shouting. One judge slammed his hand on the golden buzzer and golden confetti rained down like a miracle. Mateo fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, as the crowd chanted his name. Backstage, as producers and reporters swarmed him, Mateo searched for his mother in the audience. When he saw her, standing with tears on her cheeks, hands clasped to her heart, he ran to her, hugging her tightly. "We did it, Mama," he whispered. Papa was right. Music can change everything. In that moment, the golden buzzer was not just about fame or fortune. It was about dignity restored, about a poor boy from the Philippines showing the world that talent has no address, no wealth, no boundaries. The weeks that followed transformed Mateo's life. Offers poured in, recording deals, scholarships, invitations to perform. Yet, through it all, he remained humble. He donated much of his first earnings to rebuild homes in his typhoon-stricken village, buying boats for fishermen so no child would lose a father as he had. He bought the pawnshop guitar, not for himself, but for the next child who dreamed of music, saying, "This guitar is for whoever believes they can sing their way to the stars." The world celebrated his voice, but what truly made him unforgettable was his heart. He used his platform not to rise alone but to lift others with him. He became a symbol, not just for the Philippines, but for dreamers everywhere, that no matter how poor, how broken, or how small your beginning, with courage, kindness, and belief, you can stand on the world's grandest stage and shine. Years later, when asked what the golden buzzer moment meant to him, Mateo smiled softly and said, "It wasn't about winning. It was about proving that even a poor boy from a tiny village has something to give the world. If my voice can touch just one heart, then every hardship was worth it." And so, the boy who once sang for coins in jeepneys became a global inspiration. His story traveled across continents, carried in the hearts of people who saw themselves in his struggle, who heard their own dreams in his song. In his rise, the world was reminded of something timeless and true. Talent is a gift, but compassion is the legacy.